So today I'm here with Chaos, my little ball python, and I finally successfully got Chaos to eat frozen thawed mice instead of eating live, which is what I've been doing for the past few months. So I wanted to make sure that I actually accomplished this before I made a video on it, because it would be really dumb if I'm like, here's how you do it, yet I can't do it myself. So I finally was able to do it, and I want to give you a couple extra tips and tricks on how you can do it, and then I'll tell you exactly how I did it with my ball python. So I went over a lot of tips and tricks in my other video when I was just discussing why ball pythons go off of feeding sometimes and how you can get them to have more of an appetite and eat their food. So I'm going to put the link in the description to check that video out, because it has a lot of other tips and tricks that I just don't want to repeat because I've already gone over it. So I'm going to give you guys a couple new ones that I saw from you guys in the comments, and just new things that I've learned since then to help you guys out. So the first one overall has to be husbandry. You need to make sure that your husbandry is on point. I did cover that in the other video, but I do want to mention it again because it's just so important when it comes to getting your snake to eat anything in general. They need to have the proper temperature, the proper humidity, and the proper amount of hides within their enclosure. That way they aren't stressed out and they'll feel more comfortable and have an appetite to eat. So my second tip is to basically just have patience. So this is just regarding the amount of time it may take for your snake to actually take the frozen thawed. And for Chaos, it actually took quite a lot of time and my arm was getting sore, but you just want to be patient. If you're doing it for an extensive amount of time, then I would recommend leaving the frozen thawed rodent in the enclosure overnight. Make sure it's not live, and they could possibly want to eat it on their own. Some ball pythons are very shy and they don't want to eat with a big human watching over them because they may feel a little defensive with someone watching them, and obviously they don't want to occupy their mouth and then not have anything to bite with in case a predator comes along. So it's best to just leave the rodent. As long as it's frozen thawed, you can leave it in the enclosure overnight and see if they'll take it on their own. So that is my second tip. My third tip is to try a lot of variety. So when it comes to ball pythons, some of them are very picky and very specific, and they have weird requirements to actually get them to eat. And this is regarding literally the color of the mouse that you're feeding. It could be feeding a mouse versus a rat. It could be whether or not the rodent is dry or wet. And another thing to try would actually just to be to go to a store and get gerbil bedding and then use that scent to put it on the rodent, because ball pythons love that scent and they're more likely to go for their kill if it smells like a gerbil. So there's just a lot of variety and a lot of different types. Some snakes literally will need a dry brown mouse or something like that, and it's very specific. So it's just important to try a lot of different things to make sure that your snake will eventually take something. The next tip is to warm up the prey item before giving it to your snake. So I'm not sure how you're going to be thawing out your rodent for your snake, but if you are leaving it out for a very long time and it's not very warm anymore, the snake isn't going to be as inclined to go for it, because they do have heat pits and they can sense the heat, and that's just part of their instincts. It makes them want to go for food. So you want to warm up the rodent before giving it to them, but you have to be careful with how you do it. Some people recommend to use a blow dryer, but I wouldn't recommend to do that because the air that comes out is extremely hot and you don't want to end up burning your snake. So just keep that in mind. The best way that I do it is just by using a basking light and putting the rodent under there for a couple minutes, and then it warms up and it's a nice natural warm temperature. And you can also, if you have a little gun or whatever, to check the temperature, but you can check the temperature of the rodent to make sure that it's a good temperature for them to feed to your snake beforehand. Another tip that I would recommend is to get them used to feeding off of a tong. So if you have a snake that has been eating live rodents, they are not familiar with a tong whatsoever. And I was actually making this mistake too, because whenever I feed my snake something off of a tong, I give it to them and I have the rodent upside down and I hold it above their head. They aren't going to want to go for that, especially if they're used to eating live prey. So the best thing to do is use your tong, but pretend that it is a live prey for them, and just place the rodent in front of the snake on the ground horizontally and kind of wiggle it around and make it look like the rodent is naturally moving and alive on its own. That way it'll be more enticing for the ball python to go for and use their hunting instincts on it. And one other tip that you guys actually mentioned in a comment, which I found really interesting, I've never heard of this before, but you suggested to basically have a live rodent in visible sight for the ball python, but not in reach. I think he put the live rodent in a separate tub that was still in sight of the ball python, and then basically tricked him and fed him a frozen thawed, even though the snake saw the live rodent. So that's really interesting. And I think that that's worth a try if you're looking for ways to get your snake to eat, because if they see that live mouse, it automatically gets them into hunting mode, and then you can just switch it out and feed them the frozen thawed and they'll strike at that instead. And then the last way is basically to do a fresh killed rodent that you would most likely have to kill yourself. This was the one thing that I was like really trying to avoid, because a lot of times that is what ends up having to happen in order to get your ball python to switch, and I just really wasn't comfortable with it, and I wanted to avoid that at all costs. And luckily, through trying a lot of different things, I was able to find something that worked for my snake and I didn't have to do that. But if you are just like running out of options and you've been trying everything, that may be something that you have to do. So those are some of the tips and tricks that I have learned recently, and I'm going to let you guys know a little bit about Chaos and his story and what happened with him. So I received Chaos through Trademark Exotics, and Chaos was a baby and he hadn't had a single meal ever in his life when he was shipped to me. So it was really important for me to get him eating something, because he's a little baby and babies can't go very long without eating. It's just very detrimental to their health. They need food in order to grow at that time, and it's just very important for them. So I really wanted to get him going, and he wanted nothing to do with frozen thawed, which is completely natural for baby ball pythons. Baby ball pythons just want live. They are very instinctual and they are hunters, so that's just what they want to do, and that's what gets them going in life. So that is exactly what I was doing with Chaos, and I was feeding him live rodents. I believe I did that for maybe 2 or 3 months. I don't know how long I've had him now. How long have I had you? Probably like 3 months. But yeah, he's been eating live this entire time, and I just was not able to get him to eat frozen thawed. He wanted nothing to do with it. He would hiss at it. He was so angry about it. So the only thing I could do was feed him live. The one thing that finally worked for Chaos was a frozen thawed mouse that I thawed out in warm water. And another tip, if you're going to be thawing out your rodents in warm water, make sure it's not hot, because sometimes the mouse will literally explode if it's too hot. So just keep that in mind, because that's disgusting, and I've done that before with my first snake and it wasn't a good time. But anyway, so I thawed out his mouse, and I actually kept it in a bag so that way the mouse wasn't wet when I was going to serve it to him. So it stayed dry, it thawed out, and then I actually dipped it in a bag of gerbil scented bedding. So I literally went to a store and just asked someone for some bedding from their gerbils, and I explained that I was trying to switch my snake over from live to frozen thawed, and they totally understood, and they just gave me a bag of this bedding. So I put the thawed out mouse in the bedding, and then I put that under a basking light for about 10 minutes. So it was nice and warm, and it was fully scented with gerbil. And then I tried to serve it to Chaos. So he was definitely interested in it. I was sitting there for probably a good like 5 or 10 minutes, and I was just wiggling it around on the tongs in front of him, trying to make it look like it was alive. It was horizontal on the ground, and I was just wiggling it around on the tong, and then he went for it finally. So it was just so relieving. So now he's finally switched over, and I intend to keep doing that with him. So that was the way that worked for me. It's very picky and particular for him, but these are the things that you have to do for ball pythons, because they can be very picky eaters. So that's what finally worked for me. I hope that this video was helpful, and I hope that you guys can finally get your snake to switch over to frozen thawed, because it's just better for your snake, and it's so much easier for your life too. It's kind of annoying having to kill off a live animal. I did not like doing that at all. So I'm really thankful that I don't have to do that anymore with him, and I hope that this is helpful and you guys can do the same. So I'm going to add a little clip of Chaos eating his first frozen thawed, and I'm also going to show you just all of my other snakes eating, because I recorded all of them eating last Wednesday. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.